Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist congregation in Eau Claire. I'm the Reverend Virginia Wolf, Minister Emerita of this congregation. Our service today is about being a UU Buddhist. It's the latest in a long line of my "this I believe" statements. I'd like to open our service with a poem by Kimberly Blesser. It's called Afterwards, which sets the context for my becoming increasingly a Buddhist practitioner. Because the smallness of our being is our only greatness. Because one night I was in a room listening until only one heart beat. Because in these last years, I've worn and nearly worn out my black funeral shoes. Because the gesture of afterwards means the same thing, no matter who speaks them. Because faith, belief, forever are only words, no matter. Because matter disappears always and eventually. Because action is not matter, but energy that spent changes being. And if death too is a change of being, perhaps action counts. And if death is a land of unknowing, perhaps we do well to live with uncertainty. And if death is a forested land, it would be good to learn trees. And if death is a kingdom, it would be good to practice service. And if death is a foreign state, we should loosen allegiance to this one. And if the soul leaves the body, then we must rehearse goodbye. Come, let us explore what there is after words are insufficient, after eventual death, uncertainty, and the mystery of our existence capture our attention. Come, let us worship.
Morning, I'm Nate Otto. I am VP of the UUC board this year. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist congregation. We are a religious community who commit ourselves to diversity. We hope to nourish human differences, those of gender, race, age, ability, sexual orientation, political views, culture, class, and religious belief. Welcome to all who treasure freedom of conscience and the search for truth. We promise to do our best to provide you a spiritual home. We extend a special welcome to our visitors today. We hope you follow our Facebook page. To participate in Zoom and receive announcements about special events in our religious exploration classes, please sign up for our weekly email. There should be a link in the comments section on our Facebook page where you can sign up. Also, families can follow our UUC Religious Exploration Facebook page. There are religious exploration classes for the 4K through 9th grade and youth groups every Wednesday online for middle school and high school students. We're glad you can come and join us today.
Good morning. My name is Donald Bowery, and I'm here to introduce the March 50/50 Share the Plate recipient, Roundtable Revival. Roundtable Revival has a vision of bringing everyone to the table to create positive, supportive recovery and reentry solutions for persons who have returned to the community after a period of incarceration. We aim to cultivate inclusive, accepting, and empowering spaces with people who face barriers to reentry due to a conviction history. Together, we aim to achieve full reintegration into our greater community. As soon as COVID recovery permits, we plan to offer several programs, including peer support from people with lived experience with the criminal justice system who have become certified peer specialists, a mentoring support program that utilizes trained community members as mentors, a First Stop program that will give the recently released person a place to go to find resources and support, and the Foyer, an alcohol-free social scene in the downtown area that offers a safe and sober place to get together with friends for an evening of fun, music, games, and good conversation. Over the next couple weeks, we'll spotlight the stories of people who have faced these challenges of reentering our community after a period of incarceration. And let me leave you with a statement of our values and beliefs. We believe that each person's path to wellness is unique, and the more options a person has available for reentry and recovery, the better their chance of success. We believe that public resources are better invested in opportunities for recovery and reentry than in punishment and incarceration. We believe that peer supporters are an untapped resource for the human service, healthcare, and judicial systems and those who are being served. We also believe that recovery and reentry is beyond the individual. It involves the whole community. Please join us as volunteers and financial supporters as together we extend hope and support to those who are reentering our community. We do have a Facebook page, Roundtable Revival, and thank you for your support.
We are Karen and Tim Hirsch, and we invite you to light your chalice at home with these words by Christine Robinson.
We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together.
Our story for all ages is a Buddhist parable, The Farmer's Luck. There was a farmer whose only horse ran away. That evening, the neighbors gathered to commiserate with him since this was such bad luck.
Your farm will suffer and you cannot plow, they said. Surely this is a terrible thing to have happened to you. The farmer said, maybe yes, maybe no.
The next day, the horse returned, but brought with it 6 wild horses, and the neighbors came to congratulate him and exclaim at his good fortune.
You are richer than you were before, they said. Surely this has turned out to be a good thing for you after all. The farmer said, maybe yes, maybe no.
And then the following day, his son tried to saddle and ride one of the wild horses. He was thrown and broke his leg, and he couldn't work on the farm. Again, the neighbors came to offer their sympathy for the incident.
There is more work than only you can handle, and you may be driven poor, they said. Surely this is a terrible misfortune. But the old farmer said, maybe yes, maybe no.
The day after that, conscription officers came to the village to seize young men for the army. But because of his broken leg, the farmer's son was rejected.
When the neighbors came again, they said, how fortunate! Things have worked out after all. Most young men never return alive from the war. Surely this is the best of fortunes for you. And the old man said again, maybe yes, maybe no.
Now is the time in our service where we share our joys and concerns. You may share your joys and concerns in the chat column, and I will read them aloud in the circle of this community. We'll have some time of silence as you share your joys and concerns. Joy, this is from Amanda. Joy for seed orders arriving and the return of the light. And Elena Smith, my joy is that I adopted a cat yesterday. We are already best friends. Don says, joy for hearing the return of sandhill cranes. Ashley says, joy for spring is here. Okay, thank you for sharing. I'll light this candle to honor all the joys and concerns shared today. Please join in reading the words to close joys and concerns.
Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
A core of silence breathes beyond all words, or else the words have little
Our reading is from Why I Am a Unitarian Universalist by James Leonard Park. Ours is not a top-down religion in which the leaders at the top have all the knowledge, which they pass down to the people below. The people who choose to become Unitarian Universalists, as well as all who grew up within UUism, have the freedom to create their own belief systems. When new spiritual paths are opened, others are then welcome to try those forms of spirituality for themselves. This is how we make spiritual progress. Some spiritual insights will not occur until hundreds of years from now. But if such new insights can be explained and defended rationally, they might find a home within the UU movement.
Lately, as you may have noticed, my sermons have drawn heavily upon Buddhism. I've wondered what you might be thinking of all this Buddhism. I wondered that you might, it might have crossed your mind that I might not now be a Unitarian Universalist, but rather a full-fledged Buddhist. Has what I've said about Buddhism conflicted with your understanding of Unitarian Universalism? Did you know that there's a Unitarian Universalist Buddhist fellowship? Can one be both a Unitarian and a Buddhist? Why would one want to be? Isn't being Unitarian Universalist enough? Isn't being Buddhist? I imagine you might have been asking yourself one or more of these questions. And to be honest, I want to explore them for myself. I was a UU long before I knew anything about Buddhism. I began attending the UU Fellowship in Lawrence, Kansas in 1969, when my daughter demanded a Sunday school. At that point, I was an agnostic humanist, and members of the Lawrence Fellowship were mostly the same. For years, as I continued as a UU in the Eau Claire congregation, I varied very little from this theological position. But cracks began to appear in it in the 80s when we hired our first ministers and began moving from what was essentially a discussion group to worship services. And at the same time, I began exploring feminist and pagan theology. A major fissure occurred as a result of my attending UU Midwest Leadership School in 1990. The worship services there were beautiful, and I experienced some kind of altered state for several days that both frightened and elated me. I didn't understand and couldn't explain what was happening to me. After that experience, I continued to remember the elation and the wonder, and to wonder if I had had a spiritual breakthrough of some kind. At this point, the Unitarian Universalism I had known wasn't enough. I wanted what I could only identify as spiritual nurturance. So I went to seminary in 1993 and deepened my spiritual quest. There, I explored the perennial questions about the human condition. What does it mean to be human, to be born, to live ethically, and to die? What is the nature of reality, and how do we relate to it? What does it mean to be in relationship, to be in community? What's the meaning of life? In seminary, I spent 6 years probing these questions and have continued to explore them to this day. Most of my fellow seminarians were liberal Christians. But the mythology of Christianity didn't quite work for me. I didn't believe in God as he's generally understood by the Abrahamic traditions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Feminist theology had made me question the patriarchal, all-powerful notion of God. And paganism, with its notion of spirit embodied in nature, was more my experience of God or divinity. During this time, my wife, Carol, and my friend, Rita Webb, began attending meditation and talks led by a Buddhist teacher from Minneapolis. Carol kept telling me over and over again that I would like it. Then I took a course in world religions at seminary that made me think Carol might be on to something, as she so often is. So in 1995, I enrolled in a graduate course in Buddhism here in Eau Claire from Rita Gross and began sitting weekly with a group she had started. Each time we meditated and explored some aspect of Buddhism. Although Rita Gross has died and the Buddhism we study is not Rita's Tibetan Buddhism, that group, the Eau Claire Buddhist Sangha, continues, meeting at the center at 7 on Tuesdays or on Zoom during pandemic. My understanding of, appreciation for, and commitment to Buddhism has gradually grown over the years. But I'm not an expert. My education has been haphazard, shifting from one Buddhist tradition to another, studying under several teachers or even without one, and reading whatever came my way. I'm not qualified to be a Buddhist teacher. I still struggle with regularly meditating, although I'm getting better at it. The Dharma, or Buddhist teachings, still sometimes feel very foreign or Western. In other words, I'm still very much a student, and I may never feel entirely at home in Buddhism. But the extent to which I do feel at home results greatly from parallels between Buddhism and the Unitarian Universalist principles. Both believe in the basic goodness of humanity or the inherent worth and dignity of every person, the first principle. Both believe in compassion in human relationships, part of the second principle. Both believe in the third, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregation or Sangha. Both especially believe in the fourth principle, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. The Buddha said repeatedly that we are not just to believe his words, but to test them out and accept only what we find true. The Buddha, of course, said nothing about democracy, the subject of the fifth principle. People knew nothing about it in his time, but his teachings, especially his renunciation of castes and his acceptance of women as fellow seekers, suggest that he would have favored it. Similarly, there's nothing specific in his teachings that affirms the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, our sixth principle. But surely his goal of relieving everyone's suffering would go a long way toward achieving such a world community. The seventh principle, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part, is central to the Buddhist understanding of reality. The Buddha spoke of the dependent origination of everything, of how who we are is really a part of a vast, complicated web of connections arising and falling away, an interdependent web. Finally, when asked about whether or not there is a God or about what happens after death, the Buddha answered that we can't know, and that all we can do is focus on ending suffering in this life. This answer seems to me very you. What I find lacking in Unitarian Universalism is something that ties all these ideas together, a theology, if you will. Buddhism provides this for me, a view of life that makes sense and explains why we suffer, how to relieve our suffering, and how to nurture compassion in ourselves so that we might help others deal with their suffering and perhaps eventually transform the world. Buddhism has made a profound difference in my life. I feel as if I have a spiritual direction. Certainly, I have a spiritual practice, meditation. Of course, I could meditate without being a Buddhist. Lots of religions and secular groups teach meditation. As important, if not more important for me, is the Dharma, the Buddhist teachings. Some of it I question. Those parts that I and others believe grew up because Buddhism emerged from Indian culture. For example, rebirth and karma. Also, there are gods and goddesses in the Tibetan, Chinese, and Japanese versions that reflect their religious traditions when Buddhism arrived on their shores. These supernatural elements don't speak to me, and I don't believe that they're necessary to my being a Buddhist, although more traditional Buddhists would disagree. The Buddha saw reality as fundamentally impermanent. In a time long before quantum physics, he saw the lack of any solidity, the constant, unpredictable flow of things. And he saw that humans find this insubstantiality unsatisfactory, and that we suffer because we cannot accept it. We want solidity, safety, and eternity. Scholars today suggest that our survival instincts make us resist seeing reality as it is. We are programmed to want what we find pleasant as nourishing, and to resist what we find unpleasant as potentially fatal. Our preoccupation with getting what is pleasant and avoiding what is unpleasant develops a sense of a separate self. Thus, we seem programmed to be selfish, to put our own needs and desires over those of others as a means of survival. But this sense of a solid, separate, eternal self is an illusion, not only because of its impermanence, but also because of our interdependence, a second feature of reality identified by the Buddha. In other words, we're all deeply embedded and infinitely connected in the interdependent web of existence. We are not separate. We are not solid, but composed of a multitude of bits, blood, water, organs, bacteria, cells, constantly in motion and interdependent with one another. We are born, age, grow old, and die, arising out of a web of causes and conditions and returning to it, a process we can never fully understand or control, a mystery. What we can understand and control are our responses to this mystery. Meditation helps. Sitting quietly, learning to focus our attention on some object, such as the breath, we calm our minds. In the process, we can see how our thoughts run all over the place, trying to redo the past or shape the future. We see how fear, desire, or anger drive our thoughts. We feel pleasure or pain in our bodies. Everything comes and goes, and we experience impermanence and our resistance to it. Our struggles that get us stuck in place and keep us from seeing the way things are. Eventually, a moment or several moments of calm arise when we let go of thoughts, feelings, and sensations. We experience the peace of acceptance, the joy of feeling connected, of being at one. We see through the illusions of permanence, separateness, and immortality. Even these brief periods of clarity don't last, though, and we're back in the whirlwind of our minds, but perhaps with greater distance and insight. As the frequency and duration of this clarity increase, the whirlwind does lessen. What's more, there's a carryover into our lives. As our capacity for mindfulness grows, we react less out of our survival mind and open up to whatever life offers, embracing suffering as well as joy, increasingly understanding their connection, their causes, and their impact on us, and their persistence as a function of our interdependence. Suffering will persist as long as anyone suffers, but we can lessen it. Some of us, like the Dalai Lama, Thich Nhat Hanh, and other masters, may be able to reduce it to momentary experiences, but for most of us, it will be more intense and last longer. But all of us can alleviate our suffering by embracing it, understanding its causes, and learning to let go of that which causes it. I know this is true because I have experienced it in my own life. Whereas once I tried to control everything and spent hours worrying about what might happen or brooding over what had happened, I now only occasionally try to control some things which are not really in my control and spend much less time worrying. I suffer less and hope to reduce my suffering even more before I die. I increasingly believe the Buddhist teachings about suffering, but clearly ending suffering is not an overnight job for me and will take the work of many lifetimes for our species. Recognizing that allows me not to judge myself or others when I suffer, but rather to be compassionate about our fallibility. Meditation has provided me with this recognition and has increased my compassion. The experience of watching my thoughts, feelings, and sensations come and go, of getting stuck in the repetition of some cycle of fear or anger, of experiencing those feelings where they lodge in my body, or of coming to understand the roots of those feelings and of letting them go, has changed my life. But what is equally profound is the experience of being the watcher when all the thoughts, ideas, and sensations are gone. Some Buddhists call this watcher true self. Some call it pure consciousness, some pure awareness, and some identify it as the experience of nirvana. My momentary experiences of it in meditation and elsewhere are lovely, peaceful, joyous, uplifting, and really, really hard to describe. I feel at one, connected to everything without boundaries. I maintain my meditation practice because I see that this experience of being the watcher carries over into my life and allows me to step back sometimes when suffering arises and not react out of anger or fear. When I am the watcher, I see my suffering and that of the person with whom I'm interacting and feel compassion for both of us. I don't get sucked into the pain as much as I used to. I don't run away as much. I don't resist as much. I know the pain will lessen or go away, or I will be able to bear it. I know I can learn from it. Sometimes, of course, I do get sucked in, but eventually I come to accept it and understand it better. But the experience of being the watcher in meditation and in life offers so much more. The more I am the watcher, the more my ego drops away, my selfish self. This experience of pure consciousness, or Buddha nature, or true self, or flow, or whatever you want to call it, is sometimes called mystical experience, although perhaps that's too grand a descriptor. For most of us, this is only experienced in just a few brief moments. I can best describe this experience as being at one. The Buddhists identify it not only as the core of every living being, but also as the ground of being. Here we have what may sound like the concept of a soul, but not only humans have consciousness. So does every living being, and everything exists in the oneness which I experience. Behind the rising and falling away of impermanent reality, there is a stillness and peace and oneness. Everything arises from and returns to this oneness. Nothing gets lost. No being ever dies. We are truly one forever. This is a theology I can embrace. I see my parents in me and my children and my grandchildren. I know that those I have loved and been loved by will continue to carry that love after I die. What I have thought and cared about will live on, and I hope be improved. Do I know these answers to some of our fundamental questions are true? No, but they make sense to me right now, enough sense that I'll continue on my Buddhist path. I will continue to meditate and explore the Dharma. My mind is still open to new insights. I know I understand Buddhism in light of my 21st century culture. And here we get to why I'm still also a Unitarian Universalist. I expect to discover new information, and I reserve the right to question and explore as long as I live, and the right to change my mind. Knowing that I'm imperfect and fallible, I don't believe I can know the truth with a capital T. In fact, I don't want to. How boring life would be if we could know all the answers. I seem to be constitutionally unable to believe in final answers. For me, the joy is the ride, the search, the exploration, the flow, the living. Maybe that will change one day, but until then, I'm a Unitarian, Universalist, Buddhist.
Thank you, Virginia, for a beautiful sermon. Now is the time for giving. With gratitude for the abundance in our lives, we give to help people in need and to support the work of this congregation. As Don told us earlier, the 50-50 Share the Plate recipient for March is Roundtable Revival. You may donate online or text to give 84321. And checks can be mailed to the Congregational Hall, UUC 421 South Farwell. If you haven't turned in your 2021-22 pledge, please email the office. I think it's in the chat. Email the office. Every pledge makes a difference. Or you may pledge through a confidential link, which we have posted there too. Thank you very much. Please join us as we say the words to extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
I'd like to close with something I'll call the afterwords in honor of the Kimberly Blesser poem with which I began the service. This morning, we have flooded you with words arranged in poetry, story, a reading, and my talk. All of these words attempt to convey the truth. But let's not fool ourselves into believing that words are adequate. They only point to the nature of reality. Often music evokes the richness and depth of existence better than words, and stories and poems often act like music. Meditation also functions like these art forms, opening us up to a fuller, wider, more open, more relational experience than is ordinarily available to us. But it's nearly impossible to put this experience into words. Still, talk about it we must, trying to share our experience, trying to understand, testing our words against other words and experiences. And this effort, we hope, will bring us ever closer to understanding the nature of what is. But let's not fool ourselves. We live in an ever-changing, immense mystery beyond the capacity of words to express. In silence, we most fully experience this mystery. The afterwords are always insufficient. We can only hope that they evoke something of that to which they point, and be humble about our attempt. Let it be so. For those of you watching from our Facebook live stream, I'm so glad that you joined us today. If you'd like to get information on how to join services in Zoom, you can fill out the visitor link in the Facebook comments. Those attending in Zoom, we will take a brief moment to share joys and concerns or share names that you might not have shared during service. And then we'll move into our breakout rooms. Go in peace, go in love.